Attention Northwest Arkansas businesses and talent seekers. Introducing OnboardNWA.com, your hyperlocal job board crafted for our unique community. Struggling to find the perfect match for your job openings? Onboard NWA simplifies the hiring process, connecting you with the region's top talent through tailored talent matching solutions. Whether you're an employer seeking expertise or a professional looking for your next opportunity, Onboard NWA is here for you. Discover more at onboardnwa.com, and let's build the future of Northwest Arkansas together.
Hey, this is Gary Head at Signature Bank of Arkansas. We founded Signature Bank in 2005 with local ownership to serve our communities with the best bankers with the most authority to do business. We have succeeded in growing our bank to over $800 million in assets, including $50 million in growth in the first quarter in 21. We have 155 teammates that love our communities and the customers that we serve. We are always here to serve and eager to do so. As Chairman and CEO, I welcome your call to have the opportunity to serve you. Please call 479-684-4700 or online at signature.bank and tell them that you heard about us at I Am Northwest Arkansas.
It's time for another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas, the podcast covering the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life in general here in the Ozarks. Whether you are considering a move to this area or trying to learn more about the place you call home, we've got something special for you. Here's our host, Randy Wilburn.
Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and I'm excited to be with you today. I'm really excited because doesn't happen all the time. And you know, I've talked about this in the past, but I get to actually sit down with somebody that I've actually interviewed before. But the catch is, you never heard her episode. I am sitting with Alex English, and Alex is the Public Relations and Marketing Specialist at XNA, also the XNA spokesperson. So if there's ever anything going on out at the airport or any issues due to air traffic or anything like that, sometimes reporters will go out there and do a story. And Alex is the voice and the face that you see from XNA that represents the airport. And so I thought, man, I've got to bring her on to do the show. And originally, this is a long preamble, but originally we had sat down to do an episode back in February of 2020. And I sat down with Alex and with Rob Smith from the NWA Council. Shout out to Rob, good friend and an individual that actually really made his acquaintance at that meeting. And then we've become fast friends. We still haven't gone out for a bike ride yet, but Rob, I'll see you soon on the bike trails. But anyway, Alex and I had an amazing conversation because she really broke it down in terms of, you know, the growth of air travel to Northwest Arkansas. We talked a little bit about Drake Field. We talked about the history of travel here and just kind of where things are going in the future. And we never got to air that episode. So I told Alex, I'm going to make this up to you. We are going to sit down. We're going to do a new episode. This episode's going to be tinged with some pandemic related updates and things of that nature. But, you know, air traffic has started to increase again. And I've actually been on a flight twice, and it's crazy. I think it's the longest time that I've ever gone without being on a flight. So without further ado, let's bring Alex English on to the podcast once again. And I promise what I'm going to do is I'm also going to share with you the original episode that we aired. That will be in the show notes. You'll see a link to that so you can hear what we talked about in 2020 and now what we're going to talk about today in 2021. So anyway, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. We're having a little bit of a different discussion this go around.
Right. We
a
are.
A little bit has changed.
Yeah, a lot has changed. And so it's great. I would love for you just to kind of orient yourself to our audience and tell them a little bit about who Alex English is. Like I said, we connected through Rob and just through some things that were going on. But Tell the audience your superhero origin story.
Okay. All right. So it all started 11 years ago when I came up to Fayetteville for the University of Arkansas to get my undergrad degree, and came up from Dallas, Frisco, Texas, and really fell in love with the area. I'm like a 4th generation Razorback. So we also have a huge love for the community up here and everything that the U of A has to offer. And so decided to stay for 3 more years of school, went to law school and met a bunch of incredible people, and just continued to fall in love with the area as it grew and as things changed in the region. And so ultimately decided to stay here, not move back to the Dallas area. And so I have been here ever since, and got the opportunity to interview for a position at XNA. And the people there are incredible. We have an amazing CEO, Aaron Burks, my direct boss, the Chief Business Development Officer, Andrew Branch. It's a great team, and the possibilities for XNA and for the region are kind of endless. So I've been there for a little bit over 2 years now, and I'm enjoying it. And yes, if there is ever any type of issue on the runway or any, possible emergency, I'm the one getting the calls, and it's a lot of fun. You never know what you're going to get week by week, and I'm really enjoying it.
That's awesome. I like that. So, and I don't think I remember you telling me before that you went to U of A Law School. Did you practice law at all, or?
So I did not technically. So I went to law school. My grandfather was a lawyer in the Austin, Dallas area, and he was my hero. And so went to law school and loved the, everything there is to learn. I'm a huge believer that everybody should take like the first semester of law school because you're learning just like basic contracts and criminal law, constitutional law. And so it's an incredible basis of knowledge, right? But when I was there, I kind of decided, and through my internships, my externships that they have offered at the U of A, decided I wanted to work in more of a business environment with more of a team and not so much that traditional attorney route.
Sure.
And so I had an incredible advisor, Angie Doss, and she really helped me go into different directions that are a little bit more non-traditional after getting a legal degree. And Andrew and Aaron, my boss and the CEO, they're both attorneys as well at XNA. And so we do some legal as well. Andrew is our technical general counsel at XNA. And so I get to, exercise that muscle too, but I also get to do advertising and marketing, and I get to be on the news, and I get to work with wonderful people like you, and, just get the word out about XNA and what we have to offer in the region. And it's a lot of fun. So
it sounds like it. Yeah. And I only asked that because I actually have a number of friends that got law degrees and then went on to do other things, and they have been fabulously successful because the foundation of a legal education can prepare you for a number of different things. It's kind of like when I tell people, if I was a liberal arts major in college, and that can really set you up nicely nowadays. People, for a while there, it was like, oh, not really interested in liberal arts graduates, but then all of a sudden liberal arts became the thing. I'm using air quotes here. So it's cool. But anyway, that's cool. That is great. I'm glad you shared that. So what is happening now at XNA?
Okay, well, we've had quite a year and a half, as everybody has. I mean, it's no mystery. The aviation airline industry was hit pretty hard, especially in the beginning. We had a 95% reduction in passenger volume, which is historic. That's never happened previously. We shut down for a few days after the 9/11 attack, but then passenger volume picked up back up after that. Whereas with this past year, we are still at a reduction in volume from what we saw in 2019 and in the beginning of 2020. The last conversation we had, we were breaking records.
Right, exactly.
We were just, going to the moon with every month was a 10% growth, a 19% growth from the previous year. And that has changed. We are, our numbers are upticking, and we're really happy to see that. We're also seeing almost all of our nonstop routes have come back. They were temporarily suspended when COVID first hit, just because obviously no one was traveling. And so we have 27 nonstop destinations right now. 2 of those are still temporarily suspended, and that would be San Francisco SFO and Newark. We're hoping to have those back by the end of the year as well. But we've added routes this year. We've added an airline, which has been spectacular, especially with, the decline in revenue, decline in passengers. So as scary and as difficult of a year and a half or so it's been, it's also, there's been a lot of positive growth. And as the region continues to grow, we're just, doing all that we can to keep up with when our numbers get back to those record-breaking stats again.
Yeah, I think about that. I've actually been on that San Francisco flight, and I think Seattle. Is there a nonstop to Seattle?
No.
Okay.
We're hopefully one day.
Yeah,
So that's a highly requested route.
I would imagine it is, but and I've done the LA, I've done the LaGuardia several times. That's really convenient because I always tell people, I can get on the plane and get off in New York City.
Yeah,
and there's nothing like that. And I think those are back up and running, right?
Yeah. So we just got NYC back, which that was. I got messages constantly, when is New York City coming back? It's a highly requested route. A lot of business done out there. A lot of people who love to go and visit the city too. It's spectacular, right? But it's wonderful to have, because we are a national airport. And so we go coast to coast. And so we want to always make sure that if, hopefully no more pandemics in the future, but, that we are, for our passengers, have the availability to have a nonstop, and you land in New York City,
Right.
You land in San Francisco, and everywhere in between.
Yeah, it's super convenient. And it's funny as you bring that up, I think about the fact that every time, and this is something for those of you that are listening that may not be from Northwest Arkansas, maybe you're moving here and you travel a lot. One of the things that you will notice about traveling out of XNA is that you're going to run into people that you travel with all the time. Mm-hmm. They just may be going somewhere different, but they come out of the same gate, out of the same terminal. Maybe I'm a Delta guy and have been, but I would see the same people on Monday mornings if I was catching a flight out every week. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter. Mm-hmm. So you'd see folks from Tyson, Walmart, JB Hunt, you name it.
Vendors.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's there. And that was the cool thing about it. So it was almost like a lot of familiarity.
Community, right?
Yeah, there was some community there. So has that come back?
Yeah, we have seen an uptick in our business travel, which really, for those that aren't as familiar with the area, business travel was our bread and butter for XNA because we do have, the Fortune 500s up here, and there is so much business travel coming into XNA and going out. And so that obviously ended when COVID happened. Everybody kind of brought their people back and went remote and virtual, which was an incredible option for what we were all going through. And so really what's kind of kept the airport afloat recently, or not recently, we've gotten quite a bit of our business travel back recently, but over this past year is leisure travel. People really taking advantage of some of these nonstop routes where they can get to the mountains, and that's very easy to socially distance up there, or they can get to, a lake or these outdoor hiking areas and whatnot. So we've seen business come back slowly. I think there's still quite a bit of those, week to week business travelers that aren't back quite yet, mm-hmm. but we expect, that more of those to come back. But then also some of them will never come back because a lot of them have pivoted and they don't feel the need to travel each week.
It's called Zoom.
Right. I mean, and it's a beautiful thing, right? We get it.
It is.
And, I think that was inevitable. It happened. It was definitely expedited, right, with the pandemic. And so moving to more of a virtual with the Zoom meetings and all the different options we have now is great if you can't get on a flight, right? Or if it's just not working out. But we'll see, and right now we always kind of have a little bit of a lull mm-hmm. once the summer ends. Our summer is kind of our hottest time because we have business travel and a lot of leisure travel.
Right.
And then kids go back to school in the fall. And so our numbers go down slightly and then kind of picks back up around the holidays too. So it'll be interesting to see how much more of the business travel comes back. And yeah, we're just every day we're excited to see our numbers increase. So that's what we're focusing on right now.
I'm sure. So what did the pandemic allow you guys as an airport to do and kind of focus on? Because I think every business, right, every organization had a chance to kind of reevaluate things. What would you say are some of the biggest maybe aha moments or things that you guys decided, you know what, this is what we used to do, mm-hmm. but we're going to do things differently now? What were some of those issues for you that you guys overcame?
Well, I think just like every other business, we had to pivot in the sense of working remotely, working from home, but also, a lot of our tenants at the airport, as far as our airline workers, they're all third parties and they were there at the airport and in person, working the aircrafts, working, with rental cars, whatever it would be, the restaurants. And so we really had to kind of grow more as a team, even though we don't technically work for each other, right? So we're the airport authority, the airlines are individual from us, our tenants are completely individual. So we started these calls, monthly, weekly, where, it's like, what can we do for you guys? And it really kind of built more of a community at XNA. Like we've always had a wonderful relationship with all of our tenants, and we're so appreciative that they are all there. But it bonds people, right? And so we have a great working relationship with everybody at XNA. And, you do what you can. And at the beginning, we all felt so helpless, right?
Yeah.
Because it was like, oh gosh, which industries are getting hit the hardest, restaurants, aviation, and we have a restaurant in our airport. We have restaurants in our airports. And so, just like working together and figuring out, what's going to work for everybody and working towards a common goal was huge for us. And then also diversifying our revenue was something that us as a staff, the administrative staff and our board, looking at other ways to, be profitable for the area, because we are a huge economic factor in Northwest Arkansas. And just depending on ticket sales or, people in seats is great. And it works out 99% of the time, except if there are no people in seats.
Exactly.
And so, just looking at other avenues for potential revenue, pivoting in that sense was an interesting conversation. And then also looking at what is going to be next, because that was what was so hard with all of our incredible experts that we work with in the field, the top in their industry. They couldn't give us any type of, there was no crystal ball. There was no, hey, this is the prediction, right? These are the stats. This is in 2 years and 1 year, we're going to be back to 2019 numbers. We're going to be back to breaking records. Nobody could make those predictions, right?
Yeah.
And so that was really scary. And so it was, what can we do now? How can we keep making XNA better so that when we do, we're just, when we do get back to those numbers, we can hit the ground running, right?
Sure.
And so a lot of projects are being talked about, and we can go through some of those. They're exciting.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think, and again, this is a shout out to Rob and the NWA Council, but we had an event called Onward Ozarks, and we talked the first event, the inaugural event, which we didn't record, but that's a whole nother story. We had the folks from Height Jackson on to talk about the expansion of the airport. So I'd love for you to kind of talk about that, because I mean, people think, oh, well, things are still happening and things are still, you guys are still working at like, how do we make this better? Because at some point in time, we will get back to some of the previous numbers that we had with regard to travel counts and all that. But talk about the expansion at the airport and what that's going to look like or feel like.
Well, and with the growth in the area, we really do predict that, we're going to be surpassing our numbers eventually, right? Because it's just the region is growing. And so we definitely have to keep up with that. And so one of the projects I'm the most excited about, and I know y'all spoke about this on Onward Ozarks, is the Skybridge project. It's a really cool, it's like a facelift to the airport, but it also creates a pathway from our parking garage to what we're going to make into a second floor at XNA. So there's already 2 floors, but in that lobby area, it's really just 1 floor, and then you can go up to TSA, to security. With the Skybridge, that's going to essentially extend a walkway from the parking garage to a second floor that's going to look really cool. And then you can bypass the ticketing counters downstairs for the airlines, because a lot of people don't check luggage now.
Check in online too.
Yeah, and check in online. And that's just going to streamline the efficiency for getting passengers in seats from parking into their airlines aircrafts, excuse me. So and then it's going to change the face too of the outside of the terminal. It's going to look really neat. And we have a lot of those. I know that Onward Ozarks posted some of those pictures. It's just a really cool look, right? With the XNA lit up at night. And then downstairs, we'll do a lobby renovation as well. So our baggage claim will be completely redone for efficiency. And, our TSA was just renovated, it was kind of when COVID hit too.
It's much bigger now.
It's huge. Yeah.
It's much bigger now.
Which was wonderful. Especially with
you come into the airport and you see people kind of coming down the escalator. You're like, oh my gosh, this is insane. This is insane. So
it has much more room to spread out and wait through security, and it just looks a lot nicer too right now. Yeah. So hopefully that'll be our next project that we'll break ground on. We're finished with design on that, and really the majority of the reason we've kind of done a little bit of a wait and see with this project and have not broken ground yet is because of potential additional funding that we could get through this infrastructure bill.
Oh, yeah.
And then also months ago when we were first looking at this project, steel and lumber was just, the pricing was through the roof.
And it's gone down considerably because I just talked to somebody that's doing a home project. It's not an airport project, but it's still, he said it was an appreciable difference was how he described the cost of the lumber because his job got delayed. And in that period of delay, the price of lumber went down, and it's
kind of worked out.
It did work out.
Yeah,
it did work out.
Yeah. So so moving forward, we those prices will go down. Maybe some additional funding. Who knows what that's going to look like quite yet? But hopefully by 2022, at some point, we will have broken ground on this project.
And it's funny you mentioned that. So this infrastructure bill that you're speaking of, which is the one that's kind of being lobbied about in the Senate right now, and they're trying to get it passed. It's like a $3 trillion infrastructure bill. I didn't know, were there earmarks in there for airports, or is that kind of like a normal thing when you talk about infrastructure, that airports in some way, shape, or form are always included in that?
I'm not sure if they're always included, but we definitely are considered in this infrastructure bill. With the past year and a half that we've gone through, especially, we were impacted, and we know of some other airports who were impacted much more negatively than we were.
Yeah.
And so we don't know how much we'll get. There's also the question of allocation, where if we do get the money, who does it go to and how much,
Sure.
So it's a lot up in the air, but if it's additional funding that we can utilize for a project like this, it would be wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think it certainly will be beneficial. And like you said, as people continue to move here, as we continue to expand those numbers, we're about 475,000 people. And I think prior to the pandemic, we were 32 new people a day moving here. I don't know what that number has changed to now, but it will start to creep up again, and we're going to continue to grow. And if we get to 900,000 to 1 million people by 2045 that they're predicting, you can only expect that the airport will continue to expand.
Yeah. And that's the hope. And that's why we continue to work, assuming that one day, hopefully sooner than later, we will have those numbers, and then those numbers in passengers will just continue to grow.
And I think that's always the hard thing, right? Is how do you navigate that so that you don't, jump too far ahead of your skis, but that, you're right in line with how things go, so that you're never at a point where you're like, oh my God, we're just bursting at the seams here.
Right. And that is exactly the balance, right? And we have a wonderful board, and I've bragged about our executive staff a couple times already. And we definitely have just a group of people that have that in the forefront of their mind. And also what is going to work best for the passenger, because they are our number one priority when it comes to safety, when it comes to convenience. It is the passenger. So looking forward, so for example, we have another couple projects that we're excited about. And essentially in the A concourse, A3 and A12 those two gates have not been utilized for years, due to essentially the planes that we have now at XNA are much bigger than we ever predicted, because we thought we would continue to be a smaller regional airport, and that has not been the case. So we are working on those two gates and essentially remarking and doing some updating so that we'll have two more gates in hopefully 2022, which is a huge, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but 2 additional gates in a concourse is awesome.
Yeah.
And we'll just help with, turnover and turnaround and making sure that people have more options for flights.
So do you have the space to bring in a bigger plane into those gates now, or you'll just have to reconfigure things a little bit?
We'll have to reconfigure things. There is always the possibility that we will start to see bigger and bigger aircraft as the region continues to grow.
Right.
It just depends on demand is really what it comes down to for the airlines and what makes sense financially for them. And so there is, another project we're working on is the expansion of the B gates, the Western Concourse. Sure. And that would add around 7 to 8 additional gates. And that would be designed, I'm sure, with the idea in mind that there might be much larger aircraft. So, once again, the balance of how much are we going to grow? How much are we going to see? And
what's it going to look like?
And we got to make sure we're keeping up, but not doing too much so that, we overextend ourselves.
Right. And it's so funny. You mentioned the B gates, and I always want to make that left when I come in after the security and I come around the bend there going towards the A gates. I always want to make that left to see. I've never been down there, but I know that they're there. So, but that's awesome. So what about, And this is, I know, a question on everybody's mind. What are some of the tips or tricks that you would recommend to travelers, people that maybe don't travel a lot, but now they want to, get out and see other parts of the country or world? I know a friend of mine uses he gets these Twitter posts, and he found some insane fares from XNA to Rome for $525 round trip, which for any of you that don't travel, that's cheap. But what advice would you give people that are like, man, I would love to fly out of XNA. I can't find a really, an inexpensive fare to kind of keep up with that? Because I do see really good fares quite frequently, but it's like, how do you stay on top of that? Yeah,
so it's kind of not the answer that you might want to hear, but you have to be flexible with your dates. That's the best. I know, but if you're looking, to do, you're using your PTO, right? You gotta use your PTO, whatever it is. If you can be flexible with when you're taking off, when you're going on that vacation, you can really price compare and get something like $525 to Rome. I mean, that's amazing. And so if you can be flexible, if you can't, I totally understand that you're going to a wedding. There's a set date for a wedding.
Yeah.
What I love to do and what I always recommend is we have 6 airlines at XNA that I think a lot of people don't realize that, or they're very loyal to an airline, which I totally understand too. But look around, see what else, all of our airlines have to offer. Maybe you can fly to Denver with one airline and then fly to, your end destination with another one, and save $300-400 by doing that. Cause you're, booking a one way, versus a round trip, and each ticket, if you add them up, is lesser than, a round trip with one airline. And so I always suggest that as far as pricing, and then try to book that out, at least 6 weeks. 6 weeks is kind of the sweet spot, 6 to 8 for when the best pricing kind of comes out. So if you can do that, definitely give yourself that early bird, reward if you book out early. And then as far as like our low cost carriers, they have what we call kind of buckets, where they'll offer these really low prices for some of these seats. But once those seats book up, then it goes to the next price point up.
Right.
And so with the low cost carrier, it's also get in early if you can, because you can get one of those really cheap seats. And it's just like every other seat on the airline, just about. And so I always recommend that, and always price compare. You might assume that one airline might be cheaper than the other, and or vice versa. But I have found some surprising fares for some of these airlines that I would not have expected it to actually be cheaper to fly through one versus the other. So always look around. Google Flights is wonderful just because it compares just about all of our airlines.
Plus I do a price alert with Google Travel to, what is it called? Google Travel or Google Fares?
Google Flights is what
Google Flights. Yeah. So they have a price alert thing, just kind of like an alert. So I always monitor fares from XNA to Boston. So that's where my wife's family is, and XNA to Pittsburgh. That's where my mother is. And then XNA to San Francisco, and then XNA to LA, because that's where some of my family is on the West Coast. And so I do that, and it always keeps me up to date. And that alert will let you know when a low fare comes, you're like the first to know about it, and you can take advantage of it. And sometimes stuff will come up and you're like, I never heard about it. It's just because you're not monitoring it. So
that's a great tip. I'm going to steal that from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I do it all the time, and I have found some tremendously inexpensive deals. Like just the other day, I found a round trip to Portland, Oregon for I want to say it was like $175 round trip, which is stupidly inexpensive. Yeah. So, and just for perspective, I want people to understand this. When I was talking about that flight to Rome at $525, and I have paid more than $525 for a nonstop flight from XNA to Chicago.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So just to give you some perspective, that's a low fare.
Oh, for an international trip.
For an international trip. Yeah. Yes. And there are several aggregates out there that will keep track of nonstop flights. I've also seen a lot of inexpensive nonstop flights to both Central America and South America from XNA, because we're really not that far from like Cancun, from Honduras, from Costa Rica. So, there's a lot of really good deals. You can get down to Costa Rica from XNA for under $400.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe even under $300.
Oh, yes. I actually traveled to Cancun. This was mid-May. And we kind of did the thing where we were flexible with our dates. So we were able to find a little bit better of a deal. But my ticket round trip through United was about $300 or so. And that's amazing for an international trip. But we also are, have these great hubs like Houston and Atlanta that we fly directly to. So that helps with a lot of those destinations down to the south of us.
Sure.
So yeah, if you're looking for a beach vacation, be flexible with your dates if you can, and you can get some pretty incredible deals out of XNA, especially coming up for the fall. That tends to, it's not the busy season for them. So flights, hotels, everything, they seem to dip in prices and become more affordable.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's perfect. So before we close out, anything you want to share or kind of tease about what else you're excited about with the future of XNA?
Well, I think something that has just been such a amazing thing to witness and to be a part of this past year have been all of the additional routes that we have added that are nonstop. We started the pandemic, pre-pandemic, 2019, 2020 with 19 nonstop flights to, LAX, Dallas, all of our different flights. And now we have about 27. 2 of them haven't come back quite yet, but we, like I previously said, San Francisco, Newark, they should be back. And so we have an interest. These airlines have an interest in our market, which is, we have a new airline here. We have Breeze Airways, which has it's a brand new airline, and they decided to come to Northwest Arkansas, which I think is a great indicator for our future. I think we're just going to continue to add more and more. These airlines are going to invest in this market because we have this wonderful demographic here of people who want to travel, who are interested in traveling. And we have an incredible, aviation scene here for people that love anything and everything that has to do with any type of aircraft. And so keep your eye out on these different nonstops. We listen to people that come through our social media, that come to us, that send us emails, that send messages to us for these nonstop routes, because we see that the more we add, the more passengers obviously we're going to have, but also the more convenience there is for Northwest Arkansas, which is, if I could have a nonstop route to every major city in the United States from XNA, that would be the goal. And so we're working towards that, more routes, more airlines. I know we always get the question of when Southwest is coming.
That's like I wasn't even going to ask it at this point. That's like the $1 million question, right? And I think, why do you think people ask that question?
People are really loyal to Southwest. And I think we have quite a few people that are transplants, right? Like myself, that come from DFW and they're everywhere in DF, and they also are a low cost carrier. So people love them, and I see why, but it's just probably not going to happen for XNA in the near future. That's not to say it'll never happen, but we have 6 other airlines that are wonderful, and definitely check those out. You will be surprised. I get people that come up to me and say, "Why don't you have a direct flight here or a nonstop flight here?" And I look at them, I'm like, "We have a nonstop to Denver. We have a nonstop to Atlanta or wherever they are asking to go." And so take a look at our map online, and if you don't have like a real preference on where to go on vacation or where to, get away, go ahead and look at our map and see, where we have a nonstop to, and you don't have to spend an entire day traveling and, boarding, deboarding, getting to different airlines, airports, and you can get to some of these incredible places to vacation in a couple hours. Yeah. And you don't have to worry about the stress of traveling all day through multiple airports.
And as someone that has traveled quite a bit, I have to say I've been to a lot of what we would call regional airports. And I got to say, folks, XNA takes the cake in terms of just the look and the feel of the airport, just the quality of some of the vendors and organizations that are within the confines of the airport. They've got a huge, human-sized chessboard, a great place for kids to play, several outlets where you can go get a cup of coffee before your flight. And just remind me of the name of the restaurant that's
Smokewood.
Yes. Smokewood has some of the best breakfasts around. Legit. So I used to come early to catch my breakfast at there, and they just do it right. And it's sometimes it's nice to have a nice meal before you get on a flight. That way you can go to sleep faster.
Yeah, and then your experience is even better.
Yeah. And they also have this insane salmon salad that's really, really good.
I have not tried that.
Yeah, I highly recommend that. Yeah. And it was just kind of like a Caesar salad, but they put a piece of salmon on top, and it's just really good. And I've got that to go a couple of times for longer flights, and it's really good to have.
It's good to have. Or grab a beer at Core Brewery.
Right.
And they have great
newer.
food.
That's a newer spot, and they have a lot of really great selections there. So Yeah, you'd be surprised what our airport has, and so I certainly want to encourage you to check it out.
Yeah, check it out, and we're always looking to add. And so what we have right now is just the beginning, and I really feel like XNA is just on its way up, and I can't wait to see what we get to do over the next couple of years. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as we close out, Alex, I'd love for you just to share with the audience, since you've been living here for a while now, favorite restaurant that you like to go to, and I know I'm putting you on the spot. Just give me one or two that you enjoy. I'd love to just get your take on that.
Okay, so I have to give Peddler's Pub a shout out. We are there probably twice a week. We know the wait staff there is incredible. The people that work there are amazing. Best pizza.
Yeah, I heard they have really
wings,
good food.
are amazing.
I heard their wings are good.
The best
and they have
wings.
a good beer selection too.
Great beer selection, cool patio, right off of the Bentonville Square. So yeah, Peddler's Pub we go to too often, way too often. And then, a place we've kind of been to recently is Vivace.
Okay.
Which is in kind of it's like a little bit of like a strip mall kind of thing.
Sure.
But it has some of the best Mediterranean food.
Okay.
So if you like hummus and baba ganoush and, kebab, the falafel is amazing there.
I love falafel.
Oh my gosh. It's great. Yeah, it is wonderful. It's BYOB too, so you get to bring your own drinks if you want.
Go.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay.
So those are kind of our two go-tos right now for, when I don't want to cook, which is 7 days a week. But.
It's fine. No judgment here. It's just a judgment-free zone. Yeah. And lastly, what would you say to somebody that's not familiar with XNA or not familiar with Northwest Arkansas? What would you say would be one thing that for them will be an amazing, oh my God, aha moment about this area?
That is a great question. And I think one of the best aha moments for myself personally was you have all of the amenities of a big city, right? Yeah. You have these incredible places to eat. The coffee scene here.
Yeah, we just came from Onyx Coffee. Shout out to John and the rest of the folks over there. What does their cup say? Never settle for good enough.
Exactly.
So,
and that kind of is encompassing for the region, right?
Yes.
And so you have all of these wonderful amenities that just kind of blow you away. But then the people here are amazing and they're really kind. And we are on the squares every weekend. We're walking around, we're popping into places. And, people are just happier here. I think that our quality of life here is wonderful. And that's something that I love is that you have that small town feel, but you have these amenities that are just mind blowing as well.
No, yeah, you said it perfectly. I love that. Lastly, if people want to get connected, what's the website for XNA?
So it's flyxna.com.
Okay.
And if you want to reach out to me, you have questions, you want to chat, my email is alex.english@flyxna.com.
Okay, you have it. So it's flyxna.com and then alex.english@flyxna.com. And we'll put all that in the show notes so that way if you guys want to reach out to Alex and let her know how great she sounded on this podcast, you can do that. But man, Alex, we appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for doing part 2 of this interview. When we finally got it done, I'm so excited. And I think the people are going to really enjoy what you have to share. And we'll certainly have to revisit things again with you in the near future as things continue to expand at XNA. And if anything newly amazing happens, which I'm sure it will,
absolutely,
we will certainly be on the horn and connect with you to sit down again.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, folks, that's another episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. To learn more about us or to read or download the show notes from today's episode, visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com. You can listen to this podcast and sign up for our free newsletter to keep up with us and all things NWA. Sign up today. You can subscribe to the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast wherever you listen to it. And please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Our podcast comes out every Monday, rain or shine. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and we'll see you back here next week for a new episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. Peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Check us out each and every week, available anywhere that great podcasts can be found. For show notes or more information on becoming a guest, visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com. We'll see you next week on I Am Northwest Arkansas.